Hey, all you cinema buffs out there, I'm Dennis Stack, and I'm bringing you the review for my second favorite Stephen King movie of all time. Got Nate sitting in on this one with me, and this week's clue to the movie was a download progress. Now, Nate, I haven't explained this to you yet, and believe me, I'm aware that I'm reaching on this one, and I'm kind of stretching, but...
Yeah, because I know what we're reviewing, but I don't know how this relates to it.
Yeah, well, it's a download progress of people, pirating movies, video files.
Okay.
They're stealing these video files.
Yeah.
And another word to steal is slang, is to jack. And another word for these video files are torrents. So it's showing how people jack torrents. Like the main character in my second favorite Stephen King movie of all time, The Shining.
Wow. We really had to jump through some hurdles for that one. But I get it. That's clever.
Thank you. I appreciate
You put some thought
that.
in that. I can see that.
Yeah. So not only is this one of my favorite Stephen King movies of all time, it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Easily.
As with Nate. I mean, Nate, just give me a brief history. When did you first see this movie? You've read the book. When did you read the book? Was it before or after?
I read the book last year. Last summer,
Okay.
actually, was the first time I read the book. And I read the book because I wanted to read Dr. Sleep, which was the
sequel.
The sequel to The Shining. But The Shining resides in me from my childhood. This is probably one of the more terrifying experiences that I remember when I was a kid watching The Shining. It really is always, I get the chills thinking about it just because it really strikes to the core of fear and terror for me.
Yeah, I watched this movie also at a very young age, and it is one that has always stuck with me. It's one that not only do I watch every Halloween, scary movie season, but just every once in a while, because this was produced, co-written, and directed by my absolute favorite filmmaker of all time, Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie is just a landmark film that it's right. It's you think about it and you still get chills. Like when Danny turns that corner and the twins are there. There's just so many.
Iconic, yeah.
There's so many moments that have been parodied and borrowed and just ripped off. And it's just that this movie, even though it was so poorly received when it first came out. I mean,
yeah, it really was.
They got Razzie nominations even.
Yeah.
But not only did it achieve a cult status, but now it just has this strong following, stronger than ever.
Yeah, I think it was ahead of its time when it was made, and that's why it got all this, bad news and everything about this movie, was because it's completely different than any horror movie that's come out at that time, and it was the time when slasher films were big and all these types of more Jason and Freddy Krueger and things like that were starting to come up, and Michael Myers, and this one is very psychological and I think way different, and also we can get more into it, but it's the use of shots, editing, music, and sound that sets this apart and puts it on almost the highest mountain of horror for me. I think it's just up there as the best. Yeah,
this movie is just a true example of how to really build tension and how to say more without saying anything. There's chunks,
atmosphere.
Chunks of this movie without any dialogue, and it's just all visual imagery, but it strikes you enough. And it's one of these things where, yes, here's Johnny. There's plenty of quotes from this movie, but the things that stick with you the most is the imagery. And although Stephen King, kind of reviles this as one of the worst adaptations of his book, of one of his works, I think that this is just really a filmmaker taking the story and making it his own.
100%.
There's a reason why on all the DVD and Blu-ray covers it says Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, not Stephen King's The Shining.
Exactly.
This is his.
Yeah, and Stephen King does not like this version of The Shining, but it isn't his. I think that's a really well put way to say it, is that this just isn't his story, and Stanley Kubrick took it and made it into something, in my opinion, that is much more terrifying than the book. I did read the book. There are some... It's just so incredibly, apples to oranges when it comes to the book and the movie. I mean, it's set in the same place, and you got the same characters, but really, different events. And this one doesn't reach a little bit more... It doesn't reach as much as Stephen King's novel did. Stephen King's novel is very... out there, and a lot
fantastical,
right. And lots of different visuals and lots of different the house comes alive physically.
There's a great documentary about this movie called Room 237 where they explore all these themes and just these undertones that Stanley Kubrick put into this movie. Now, Stanley Kubrick, if you've seen any of his movies, if you know what kind of filmmaker he was, nothing is ever by accident in any of his films. Every shot, every cut, everything involved in it has a purpose and serves a purpose.
And it's meticulous. Meticulous.
Yeah, planned ahead months and months. I mean, there's a clip in the documentary where one of his assistants was like tracking the weather for the area they were shooting in for like the last 3 weeks. He had no idea why he had to do it, but he just had to do it.
Yep.
And it's just, you can just tell that this was truly made by a master filmmaker. But Nate, just what are your favorite things? Like, what do you like most about this movie and what it achieves?
Well, I think that you said it best, is the atmosphere, the building of dread, the hotel being a character in itself, and this weird sort of aspect of sense of place. Room 237, the documentary goes into it, where this hotel almost seems like it takes shape. It almost, you don't know what hallway you're down, you don't know what room and why it's in this location. And I really think the sense of dread that builds, and the sense of atmosphere that Stanley Kubrick, and the score that goes along with it, it just leaves a complete eerie feeling throughout. I also think he did shots and he did music composition with these shots differently than any other, and that's the lack of jump scares. That's what's so bizarre, and I'm seeing it now more in modern horror movies, where there's a scene where Danny's playing darts. And he's just sitting there throwing darts, and he walks over and gets the darts off the board, and he looks over, and we pan to see the two little girls standing there in the cafeteria. But there's no jump scare music. It's just this drone. And I feel like it leaves more of an eerie, bad taste in my mouth feeling when there's no like, boo, we're here. It's just like they're standing there staring at him with no jump at all. It's really like, it's just very bizarrely put together, and especially for its time.
Yeah, jump scares I think are like, they startle you kind of scare, where I think like in just a creepiness, eerie, tension building scare like the one you were talking about.
Yeah.
I think that's way more effective to me personally. One person dies in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's still one of the scariest movies of all time.
Right, and I think it has to go to friggin' Jack Nicholson. Man. He owns this. He is complete insanity incarnate, and that's what fascinates me, I think, the most, is what goes on with Jack, his journey through this hotel and discovering its past and maybe even its future, who knows,
right?
You know, and I think that's one of the most compelling parts of it, is going along with Jack as he goes crazy.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson, he totally just commands this performance, and it's an iconic performance. It's one that actors dream giving, just how menacing he is. I remember Stephen King was, against Jack Nicholson playing this role because Jack Nicholson already seemed a little crazy, so it's, it's easier to believe the transition.
Yeah.
But I think that it works to the effect. You can tell that, because there's backstory in the book that's not really provided in the movie. I mean, you don't understand that Jack has been fired from teaching, and that's why he's doing this. He makes it seem like, oh, I'm just tired of teaching, I'm looking for a new challenge. But so he's a little unhinged at the beginning.
Yes.
Anyway.
Already, yeah.
So I think that it just lends to it, and it could be just the power of the hotel. It attracts that kind of person to this job.
Yeah, and that's what's so different about the book is a lot of people criticize it because they like the book more, because Jack is more of a sympathetic character in the book. He is fighting to be a good person. He is fighting alcoholism. He wants to be a good person, and he is consistently fighting the powers of the hotel. But in this one, man, Jack is just like, he almost loves it. He almost goes for it. He takes the bait in this one.
And he embraces it.
All the performances across the... I mean, even say what you will about Shelley Duvall. I like her in this movie. I think she adds an eeriness. Just the look of her in general is... She's just kind of a weird-looking lady.
Yeah, and, she kind of gets... Throughout the movie, she's kind of played as, the dumb victim wife.
Yeah. But
the way she's able to outsmart Jack and get get the advantage on him towards the end, she becomes stronger. Yes, Wendy at the beginning of this movie probably wouldn't have survived this, but as she goes and progresses through this, the hotel makes Jack a little bit more mad. I think the hotel kind of made Wendy a little bit more stronger, a little bit more independent.
No, I think the highlight of this movie is, especially for filmmakers, I've studied this movie. I've studied this a lot because it's just so incredibly good with the direction. I think the direction of this movie, the shots, the creative use of, following Danny in the halls while he's riding his bike around and things like that. These long takes that they use that was really different, I think, at that time, at least for a horror movie. Some people would call it slow, but for me, I call it creative. What do you think about the direction of the movie?
Oh, yeah, I think it's completely innovative. And some of these things that are great about this movie are just by accident. One of my favorite parts is when they are tracking with Danny while he's riding the big wheel, and he's going over the carpet, and there's those moments where it's just silence as he goes over the carpet, and that crashing sound as he goes over the wood. It's so cool, and it's just something that happened by accident. And that they kept in the movie.
I think it's flawlessly directed. There are certain shots, even for its time, where I'm like, how did they do that? There's one point where he's staring at the hedge maze model, and we get a shot of it, and it's panning in on the model, and it almost looks endless. Like, it just covers the entire frame. And as we get closer, it's a really long shot. You see them walking around in the hedge maze. I'm like, how did they do that? Go from the model seamlessly into them actually walking into the exact same hedge maze. There's tons of really, really awesome shots like that that just like beg the question of how they did it. And a lot of shots that are just completely interpretive. There's things in there. There's so many fun questions that you can discuss with your friends for hours about what you think this means.
Yeah, and
especially the ending.
Oh, totally. I was just about to say, I think that's one of my favorite things about this movie. It doesn't leave you with answers. It leaves you with questions. And there's tons of people who have made film theories, and once again, it's just something fun to discuss with people who also love this movie. You know, interpret what does it mean with, you know, Jack's picture at the end.
Yeah.
You know, what does it mean with the party? What did it mean when Delbert Grady told him he's always been the caretaker there, when we heard a story about how he was at one point? You know, is it just, you know, the hotel has always been the caretaker and just making the caretaker mad? That's the, like, maybe the spirit that possesses him. That's always been the caretaker. So many things to discuss.
But yeah, just like even with the Room 237, just its entity in this movie as well is shrouded in mystery. There's a point where he's playing with the toys and everything, and the ball rolls up on him, and you don't know who rolls the ball up on him. And it just comes out of nowhere, but it's the same ball that Jack was playing with when he was trying to think of what to write.
Right.
And it's like, why was that there? What does that have to do with anything? And I think there's questions just throughout the entire film that you just can constantly rack your brain about. Even when he's telling him about the previous caretaker, his name's not Delbert Grady at the beginning. It's a different Grady. So
I never noticed that.
Is it a family bloodline that lends this? You know, are the Torrances like bound to be there as a family because other Gradys have gone through that hotel? Like, there's all these questions that I've constantly been talking about, like with film goers and, you know, friends and everything. I love talking about this movie. I could do it forever.
Buffs. All right, Nate, so we've gushed about this movie for a few minutes now, and I don't think we need to summarize our score or anything, but I do want to know real quick, what's scarier to you? Danny coming around the hall and seeing the twins, or the old lady out of the tub?
Oh, God. It's gotta be the old lady. I covered my eyes during the old lady part.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, obviously as a kid, it's just like the most grotesque, terrible thing in the world. But I think that, yeah, definitely, if there is like a jump scare, it's probably the girls in the hallway because you don't see it coming. But that dread going into Room 237, that got me too much. It's terrifying. What about you?
Yeah, I'll give the slight edge to the old lady coming out of the tub. I think image-wise, visually, the other scene's scarier.
Yeah.
But that laugh that she does as the old lady, that's always like creep me out.
Yeah.
Because one of my buddies would do it to torture me, and it still works to this day. So.
Yeah, it is. That is such a scary part of that movie. The scariest part of the movie, I would say, probably.
But why don't you go ahead and throw a number on this movie?
I mean, I just said it was perfect. It's a 10 out of 10 easily. You
know? Yeah, it's a 10. There's no doubt about it.
There isn't.
It's just, it's hard to call a movie perfect and flawless because you can always pick something out, but this movie is pretty flawless.
It's pretty flawless, and if I can suggest something, wait until the dead of winter and you just got a day off and you're all held up in your house. Watch The Shining. I always like to watch a double feature of The Shining and The Thing when I'm all held up in wintertime. So it's a good time to watch it.
Yeah, and at night. Watch this movie at night. Allow yourself to get scared.
Definitely.
Buffs. All right, so that's it for my review of The Shining, Nate. Thank you very much for sitting in on this one. I know you love this movie. Glad to talk to someone else who loves this movie.
Yep.
And be sure to join me next week. I'm going to be reviewing a Stephen King movie I have yet to see. And the clue for that movie is a flame. What could it be? Fire starter? House burns at the end of Pet Sematary 2.
Yeah.
Who knows what it could be?
Yeah.
But Nate, thanks again for sitting in, and maybe you can guess the movie next week.
You're gonna review The Dead Zone.
Damn it, Nate.